and get started. Focus today will be the market, as lately, as you probably know, market has really been everything. Focus with earnings season winding down, market pretty much moving everything along with it. So let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for March 9th, 2021. Q's up 3.9, SPY up 1.4. Retreated a little bit off the highs here as we approach the close on the Q. SPY pulled in a little bit more, but overall on the larger time frames here has actually been holding up more closely to the highs there on the SPY. Okay, and then Q's here, you can see we got the deeper pullback. Okay, coming into this week, we had a bearish bias, right? Bearish as long as we didn't create a sell setup and fail on it. So first thing we did yesterday was create the sell setup. Here's the pivot, right? And then so over today's high was our inflection point. If we break over yesterday's high, then we are no longer bearish on the Qs, but we were going to remain bearish until it took out that pivot. So that was the plan there on the Qs. And then yesterday into the second half of the day was sticking to that, following through. See hourly trend there on the Qs. And then here was the hourly trend on the SPY here. A little bit less of a well-established pivot there on the SPY, but here was the pivot anyway, following through. What happened this morning? We got a gap up, and we took that out pretty much right away there on the SPY and with the Qs. Okay, so took that out in the morning, no longer bearish. So this is what we call a bullish gap surprise. It's where you have a wide range red bar and then you gap up and clear more than half of it. You can see this definitely cleared the majority of it. And then the SPY, a little bit less of a bearish bar, but Qs here, pretty impressive pro gap there on the Qs. And you see for pretty much the whole day up until the very end here was in a pretty consistent uptrend, okay, on the Qs. So we are now out of that bearish bias that we were in yesterday because the hourly trend has broken. Okay, going into tomorrow, gonna be neutral. You can see we've rallied up here into the resistance on the Qs, SPY as well. Okay, we were looking at this range before, so it's interesting that we broke down below. We definitely got some follow through to it, but now back into it, into this range, into this resistance, right? So will we be dealing with that sideways for a bit, or are we gonna get another gap up? I think, and this is what I told the room too, if we gap up tomorrow and we're able to kind of get through at least today's high, I think it's the quickest that we can have kind of a clear bias, because we'll be back to bullish. Because then the hourly downtrend will now be in an uptrend, or what was in a downtrend will be an uptrend, and we'll be back in alignment with the larger time frames. So then the smaller time frames or the faster time frames will be back in alignment with the slower time frames, the larger time frames. If we gap down, however, it's a little bit tougher because you can see the smaller time frames are trying to transition here. We just got a higher high. And if we gap down, the expectation is higher low if we're going to continue, right, the trend that's in place. Daily has broken the uptrend, but then the weekly is still in an uptrend, and so is the monthly. So if we gap down and this week, or move lower over the course of the week, it'll be back to more conflict and probably a little bit sloppier price action. If we gap up, especially if we clear over today's high, more easier call to be bullish on the Qs and SPY. All right, so that's the plan for tomorrow. Don't have any trades to go over with you today. No calls from me today. Primarily, if you're in the room, you know the focus was on scalps today, because as the market's been moving up, kind of in contrast to last year, when the market's moving up, scalps are a little bit easier. And so since we had a nice move in the market all morning, that was the focus. Okay, and especially when the market's gapping up like this and you see stayed strong, a lot of the pro gaps or a lot of the gap ups, right, are not really going to be on their own page. So as soon as the market maybe pulls back a little bit or shallow pullback, a lot of those will pull back as well. So, and the gap downs list was pretty poor. So focus today was the scalp. So no calls from me today. All right. Hope you did well today. We'll be back at it tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then. Have a good evening.